Welcome to another episode of Life and Whiskey. As always, I'm Jordan, and today we're going to explore Weller's Special Reserve, and we're also going to do a little bit of cooking. We're going to be making some Huns in the Sous Vide, and that's going to be our project for today. I was feeling a little bit fancy, so decided to go for the Weller, and I say that kind of in jest because here in Wyoming, where I live, I can find this I bought this bottle for $23.49. You probably should not be paying more than $35 for it. And I know some people are paying in the hundreds of dollars for it. Um, if you're traveling or you're somewhere where it's not so heavily populated, you can probably find it for retail price and plenty of it in stock. I can buy a bottle of this pretty much anytime I want. So definitely don't go out there paying hundreds of dollars for this. For number one, as far as flavor goes, to me personally, this would never be worth even $50. So if it doubled in price, I would not be buying it. It's a good whiskey, don't get me wrong. It's just not an amazing whiskey worth copious amounts of money. So it is a wheated bourbon by Buffalo Trace. It is a 45% ABV or a 90 proof whiskey. It's a NAS, so a non-age statement whiskey. And yeah, let's kind of get into this on the nose a bit. So to me, this has a very corn-heavy nose. Vanilla and caramel. It smells fairly sweet. A little bit of oak underpinning in there. Nothing over the top. It's right down the middle of home plate as far as a bourbon would go. It definitely has that sweeter brown sugar maybe in there on the nose. Very light fruits. Apple. Definitely some apple in there. Right away on the palate. Not super complex, sweet forward, light fruit forward, kind of just quickly blows right through. A little bit of pepper spice before it goes into the finish. Finish has a little bit of oak, a little bit of spice in it, a little underpinning of sweet in the finish, a little caramel. But I'd say the whole experience is less than 10 seconds. It just moves very quickly. There's not a lot of depth to it. It's good. It's a good, easy sipper. Nothing out of the ordinary. Little now that time going back a second time, I got some apple up front, almost going into a cherry, moving into a honey and a caramel before going through that finish. Yeah, it's a very good whiskey, and for $23.49, I'll buy it all day long. But much more outside of that, and I'm looking at something else. So, anyways, there you go. There is my take on Weller Special Reserve. And later on, in a couple of months, hopefully I'll be able to do one on a Weller Antique 107. And we'll have that one. So there's my review of the whiskey. So now this portion, we're going to get into Huns. So I have a whole bunch of Hun breasts here. The method of cooking that we're going to be doing is we're going to use a sous vide. Now, my brother, thank you so much, bought me this for Christmas this year. And I was a little, not taken aback, but I had voiced some concerns and frustrations with it. To me, it seems a little too opulent. The fact that you're using, 7 quarts of water and just pitching it. You're using vacuum sealed bags, one-time use, get rid of it, just for cooking stuff, things like that. It just seemed like a lot of wasted resources just to cook your meal. Found several workarounds, reusing water. So if I try and sous vide something, I try and do multiples day after day or within a couple of days. So I'm not throwing out water and wasting water. When it comes to bags, instead of vacuum sealing, although I do have a vacuum sealer, I'm just using gallon Ziploc freezer bags. I find that to work really well. It's a little bit cheaper. I can wash them out really good and reuse them if I need to. Um, and so I just try and use stuff as much as possible so that it's not wasting it. That being said, those are my gripes, the few gripes I had about the sous vide. That being said, if you cook wild game, you definitely need a sous vide. And I know my brother, if he ever watches this, is going to giggle at me saying that. But if you are cooking wild game, you have to have a sous vide for just for the general experience. It keeps you from overcooking stuff, drying it out, changing flavors. So I've used it on elk and antelope. It definitely made the best antelope steaks I've ever had in my life. The elk, although I love cooking them on the grill and stuff, the elk steaks, the quality of the meat, the texture, that's the word I'm looking for. The texture of the meat was much different. I mean, it just cooked absolutely perfect, and it was as my wife explained, it's the best elk steaks we had had. And so taking it from her word, now we've always really loved and appreciated wild game meats, and I've always done a very good job of cooking them, medium rare on the grill and stuff. But compared to this is just way better. Another downfall, sorry, I forgot to mention this one, about the sous vide is that you have to plan ahead. I'm used to like taking some elk back strap out of the freezer, throwing it in the sink, thawing it in 20 minutes, slap it on the grill for 10 minutes, boom, done, we're eating, right? Sous vide, got to plan ahead a bit. A couple of hours at a minimum. Typically, you're going to want to do like 2 hours for a steak from thaw, and maybe 3 or 4 hours if frozen. But the nice thing about sous vide, the cooking mechanism is, so it's a heater that heats up your water, and the water heats to a specific temperature, and then once it reaches that temperature, it doesn't go anymore. So there's none of this oscillation of above temperature, cool to below temperature, raise it back above like you would if you were cooking it on a grill or if you were cooking it by any other means. And what that means is you set the temperature at, like these, we're going to cook these at 145 degrees for 4 hours. And in that time span, the meat will never get above 145 degrees. So it ensures that it cooks all the way through your piece of meat without overcooking it at any point. So that is definitely a benefit to have. But you do have to plan ahead, so it's kind of like setting meat, in a crock pot in the morning before you go to work, and then coming home to a home-cooked meal. Same kind of concept. You got to plan it out a little bit. So this is what we're going to cook or eat tonight. Now, anybody who knows me knows I'm a bird hunter. I lived in North Dakota for 8 years, and I hunted every single day of bird season. My hunting partner got me into bird hunting when I was 16, took me on my first pheasant hunt to South Dakota. Absolutely fell in love. He had a dog kennel at the time, gave me my first English pointer, and, just loved hitting the prairies with that dog. Now that I live in Wyoming, I got my hunting partner fortunately gave me my second pointer a couple of years back, and so I've been running that dog. And here in Wyoming, when I first moved here, I was a little bummed thinking that there wasn't going to be much for bird hunting. But lo and behold, the state does released pheasant hunts. And that's nice to put some pheasants in the pot and whatnot. There are several places where you can get into wild pheasants for sure. And because it's sagebrush country, those things can really run, which makes it a bit entertaining. There's plenty of sharptail around out on the prairies. Sage grouse, although I've never hunted them, you can find them out on the prairies quite a bit as well. Up in the mountains, you can find plenty of rough grouse and dusky grouse. They just call them mountain grouse altogether. And I, growing up in Wisconsin, rough grouse hold a special place in my heart. I have no problem thumping a bunch of them. And then here, well, actually throughout the state, there's plenty of places to find Huns. Anywhere out on the prairies, you can go out to the Thunder Basin, out to the grasslands out there, find tons of Huns out there. You can go up into the Bighorn Basin, and you can find chukar partridge as well. So plenty of opportunity here, unbeknownst to me and probably many other people. And so I've been having a blast since we moved here, just going after birds. The nice thing about partridge, so Huns, which they call Hungarian partridge, Huns, gray partridge, all the same bird. That's a partridge along with the chukars, which are a chukar partridge. So those two types of partridges. Partridge season, you can hunt all the way until January 31st. So after pheasant season closes and grouse season closes December 31st, I can still hunt for another month out in the snow, out in the cold, and the blowing winds and whatever else, out in the hill country. You'll find that it's really, really steep and deep out there, but so bring your legs for sure. But oftentimes you'll have as much land as you can find unto yourself. So I go to several places around here. There's some chunks of state land that are, 14 sections large. I can have the entire place to myself in January oftentimes. So great time to get out with your dog, have some fun. So, and you'll find they're often on the south slopes because the sun hits that, melts off some of the snow, makes it a little bit easier for them to get to the seeds and to be feeding. And they're often at the very tops of the peaks of the hills because the wind blows all the snow off of them, and then the sun hits it, warms it up, and they're able to get there. So little bit of a couple of tips there for you if you're going out hunting them. They're going to be running up at the tops of those ridges. So like here where I'm at, those hills can run 300 to 500 feet high. So, up and down, up and down, up and down all day. It can get pretty tiresome, but it's a lot of fun. I highly encourage you to get out there and give it a try. So today's recipe, super, super simple. I'm not going to show you the finish, although just because I don't want to try and splice together these videos, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do, right? So it doesn't get much easier than this. This is just kind of my own made up, if you want to call it a recipe or not. But I got these Hun breasts here. I'm going to sprinkle some Old Bay seasoning on there and just coat them really nice. Nothing too, elaborate here. And I'm just going to coat them really good because as they cook in the sous vide, those juices and stuff are going to come out of these breasts, and it's going to create its own marinade that it's going to cook in. So got some Old Bay. I'm going to just crack a little bit of sea salt over the top. Nothing much. Then we're going to do the same with some pepper. So just a little bit of seasoning. We're going to place these birds into my Ziploc bag here. And then once we got them in here, we are going to put some whole sprigs of thyme in there along with these birds. Quick, wash my hands off before I transition to something else here. We got our thyme. So this is just thyme that I'd grown a couple years back, and I took it, and it's kind of been traveling with us, freezing, throwing it in the freezer as we go. So I'll grab a pretty good handful of thyme and just kind of scatter it all throughout over the top of all these birds in here. Making sure that I get some pretty decent coverage on stuff. Put a little extra in there. Now, thyme's one of those seasonings that are herbs that I absolutely love. So in my book, you can't have too much of it. And then one final thing. So if you have not done this already in your life, I mean, this is not really a secret, but if you haven't done it, you better better start trying it out. Anytime you cook a steak or any good piece of meat, um, finish it off with some butter. It really opens up the flavor um, quite drastically. A little bit of nice salted butter in there. And so that's what we're going to do with these birds. We're going to take and put a couple of pads of salted butter into the bag with these birds while we're cooking it with the sous vide. Then, so we're going to use this butter along with the bird juices just to kind of create this little marinade inside the bag as it's cooking. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put it at 145. So we're going to cook these birds at 145 degrees for about 4 hours. These are frozen at the moment. I just pulled them out of the freezer and thawed them out just a little bit out on the surface so that the seasoning would stick to the birds. And come on, butter. And so what we're going to do then is after the birds are done cooking in the sous vide, that butter that's in there, we're going to take and heat up a skillet on pretty like medium-high heat. So we're going to heat it up quite a bit. And we're going to finish these or brown these in the pan, and we're going to use the butter that we cooked it in and the juices that have come out of them to brown that meat. And we're just going to throw them in that pan for maybe like a minute or two on each side, just enough to brown everything. So these are skinless breasts that I have in here. And there's not much fat on them or anything like that. So we're going to add the fat in with the butter, and that's what we're going to use to fry the exterior and brown up these breasts, and then we'll serve them as is. This is a really great dish to have with wild rice or some kind of a noodle side dish, and a nice vegetable like an asparagus, maybe a little potato on the side, something like that. But the reason why I picked this Weller, this wheated bourbon, out is that I think the flavors in this whiskey will go really, really good with any type of bird wild game meat, especially if it's a lighter colored meat like the ruffed grouse, these Huns, or pheasant. Any dish like that, this flavor is going to meld in with that. So those fruit flavors that you find in this whiskey will kind of really accentuate the flavors of the meat quite well, and they go together great. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to use this sous vide to cook this meat, and then, like I said, I'm just going to fry it up to finish it off right before serving. Today's whiskey that we reviewed was Weller Special Reserve. If you can, go out, find yourself a bottle of it. Try not to overpay too much for it, and enjoy your evening. And hopefully you too can try this recipe out sometime. If you're not from around here, definitely check out Wyoming. It's a cheap state to go bird hunting in. It's not exactly known for its bird hunting, and so because of that, you can come out. I want to say it's like $28 a day or something like that. You can buy a license as a non-resident by the day. Don't quote me on the price. I just know it's cheap. But there's plenty of opportunity out here, plenty of land, and a lot of fun. So feel free to come out, check it out, pick up a bottle of your Special Reserve. Please leave in the comments below what you can find Weller Special Reserve for in your area. Any other comments you might have. Please like, subscribe to the channel, help me grow this thing. And if you have any other comments, please feel free to leave those below as well. Thanks for watching. Have another great day, and we'll catch you guys later.